Okay. We have started broadcasting for Leadership for Change, moving from ideas to action. Welcome everyone coming in to the conversation. It looks like we have some participants logged in already. So if you want to let us know in the chat where you're logging in from, we'd love to hear from you. Also, a reminder in the beginning, please change your chat to all panelists and attendees. We want everyone to be able to see your great comments. So let us know where you are coming from. Emily from Rochester. Hello, Ingrid from New York.
New York, Long Island.
Leslie from Long Island. Excellent. Lily from Columbus. Hello from Phoenix.
Welcome, everyone.
Excellent. See some names I recognize from previous episodes, previous webinars in this series, so that's fantastic. Unfortunately, Monica couldn't join us today, but we have Cassandra and Fiona here to kind of guide us through this next change. Again, this is Leadership for Change, moving from ideas to action, brought to you by Red Leaf Press. My name is Meredith Burks. I'm the Product Marketing and Customer Experience Manager here at Red Leaf. And this series is built on information from Fiona Stewart's book, Building Together for Collaborative Leadership in Early Childhood Systems, and Cassandra O'Neill and Monica Brinkerhoff's book, 5 Elements of Collective Leadership for Early Childhood Professionals. So we've had a wonderful time bringing you this series, and this is the 4th one. So our last series webinar will be in February on Valentine's Day. We thought that would be a nice way to end the series. And if you are joining us for the first time and you would like to go back and watch past recordings or other webinars that we have available, feel free to visit redleafpress.org/webinars. So I am just going to let you guys kick off and take it away.
Thank you, Meredith. This is Cassandra O'Neill, and thanks everybody for hopping on. Happy New Year, new decade, and I know it's a tough Friday. I said the longest week of the year, I think, is the week after New Year, so thanks for being here with us. We're excited to talk about this topic, and this graphic we've been using at the beginning of every webinar to kind of anchor us in a visual that we're talking about leadership starting with the self, moving out to team, and then moving out to organization, which is what we're focusing on today. And then our next webinar will be focusing on that last ring, the community. So the guiding question for the series has been, what is the relationship between leadership and change? And you can go ahead and move the next slides. So thinking about, we're just going to do a very quick review. It's not mandatory that you have been at the previous ones. We've designed each webinar to be a standalone, and we're also making connections for people that are able to attend more than one. So our first webinar, we really focused on what we think leadership is, that it's not about position or title, it's about how you act and how you choose to be. So thinking about what could happen, what could be better, and how do you want to work towards that. And we're talking about collective and collaborative leadership, which is inherently about working with others, and that this type of working together is really potentially transformational. So the next webinar, we focused on having people reflect on what they tried since the first webinar. So we asked people to kind of try something new and think about like how our brain science affects us. So we went over the basics of what the Rick Hansen from Hardwiring Happiness calls the red brain and the green brain. That when we feel calm, we're in a green brain state. We feel agitated, kind of reactive, then we're in a red brain state. And so really helping us to override the negativity bias that we have in our systems, which has kept us alive and surviving. And really looking at making any change at all takes, you know, a lot of curiosity. It involves risk taking. It can bring up emotions of fear. And we talked about joyful perseverance, about how we can keep going, trying new things, even if they don't work out as we think, and we're building that muscle of how to try new things. And then the last webinar, we talked about taking kind of these ideas and experimenting with your own team, no matter what your role is. So if you were, you know, a manager or supervisor, there's things that you can do to invite your team, but you can actually embrace your team and do things that are new and different, and no matter what your role is. And so we had a lot of input from people in the chat box about ideas that they had or things that they've already done that they know are successful, because you can invite others to share your thoughts and ideas with curiosity, and then receiving them in a way they feel honored. And we had a lot of good ideas, and hopefully we're going to have some people typing in a few minutes of kind of their experiments that they did and how they went. So the next slide, we're focusing on today. And again, we're going to talk about what were the successes that you experienced in embracing and engaging your teams. Hopefully people remember. It feels like it was a long time ago, but in December we talked about things you could try, and we'd love to hear how they went for people. And then we're going to explore about how do you take these successes that you've had in your team and move them out into other parts of the organization. And we're going to ask people again to then, at the end of the webinar today, think about things you could try. And we're going to loop back on our last webinar, seeing how those things went. So we've been kind of building out in those concentric circles. So the next slide, we're going to have the time for you to type in the chat. So please select all panelists and attendees and go ahead and share what your learning goals are for the webinar today. So I went over what they are for the group, that we're going to reflect on things we've tried with teams. We're going to think about how to expand this out into the organization, out beyond our team. And we're going to develop some experiments that we can try with other teams or all the teams in the organization. So go ahead and type into the chat what your learning goals are. And we have some coming in to learn strategies to enhance leadership capacity. Love the idea of how to expand this out to team or organization. Yeah, and I thought about it, and you may not want to go outside of your team at this moment in time, and that's totally fine. Sometimes teams are in environments where they kind of want to secretly do some things and they don't want to share them with others. And if that's the case, that's fine. You know, our next webinar, we're going to talk about community, and you might want to try there. But even if you are in that position and you feel like, I'm not sure I want to try, it's still a great conversation to have, to just start thinking about it. And you might change your mind. You might be like, hey, I never even thought about that. Maybe that would work. So really don't feel any pressure, but just keep an open mind. And yeah, so people are adding in that they like thinking about and talking about how to move from talk to action.
Yeah,
all right.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
I know we all spend a lot of time thinking and talking in meetings and whatnot, but the idea of really moving for change and really working towards things being transformed in a new way.
Yeah, and that's why we've had such a big focus on trying experiments and reflecting on them, because this is the thing that will lead to action, actually doing something. All right, so we've had some more people type in learning goals, and now I'm going to ask you to go ahead and type in what have you tried and how's it gone. So if you've tried something recently with your team, go ahead and type it in. And if you have some ideas, and even if it wasn't recently, like say this is your first webinar, but you have remembered a time where you did try something with your team, feel free to add that in too. So again, we're building this muscle of trying new things.
Somebody wrote, I would like some sort of activity protocol to talk with team about shared goals.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about that today, and I'll try to add some thoughts in on that question.
And
Thanks for putting that.
I actually have an idea for that we could put in our next webinar.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So somebody suggested viewing the video, Simon Sinek's on the why, as a way to talk about shared goals.
Somebody said that they've let everybody know that change is coming and asked for ideas. Great.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so Lisa, hi Lisa, is talking about what she's been trying with the university as an MSW student to support the students having self-care, which is so important. And while the university is saying that it's a good thing, there aren't any structures in place yet to help people do that. So she's working on creating some, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So somebody else put in that one idea implemented well is better than waiting to perfect. Yeah, so don't let what is that saying? The perfect is the enemy of the good. Doing anything is success. Trying anything is success.
Sure. And even if it's, it doesn't work out exactly as you thought, just even taking a risk and modeling that shows people that it's okay. That it's okay to jump in there with ideas and take risks and try new things.
Yeah.
It'll create a collaborative environment for doing that.
Absolutely. There's nothing more powerful than having someone in a leadership position demonstrate and model taking a risk or being vulnerable about something they tried that didn't work. That kind of gives people that are on the organizational chart in a lower position the visual that it's okay to take a risk. All right, so somebody else added in about listening and thinking about what the team member's saying before I respond. That's awesome, and really I think all of us can work on that all the time. Powerful listening and being present to what's being said. All right, well, I think I'm going to turn it over to Fiona at this point. Nope, I have one more slide. Okay, so bright spots. Now, some of you may be familiar with this. It's an idea that Chip and Dan Heath write about in their book Switch. And it's really a simple idea. It's incredibly powerful. So one of the things that happens in organizational cultures a lot is that we focus on things that aren't working. And we overlook and sometimes completely ignore or dismiss the things that are working. However, that is the biggest return on investment for change, is to look at what is working well. And so looking for bright spots in your team, in your organization is really, really exciting. It's energizing. And there are good things going on. I absolutely agree that even if you are experiencing a lot of challenges, there are going to be some bright spots. So look at what those are. Where is something happening that's really great? And then how can you have more of it? And it might be like doing that same thing more often. Or it might be telling other people about it and inviting them to try it. And really looking for these small things that make a big difference. I mean, things like saying hello to people and looking them in the eye actually are huge change, positive change, result in huge positive change. There was, I think I mentioned this Dan Pink video about how it led to like increased employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction. Just this simple practice of people starting to say hello to each other. So thinking about these bright spots, and then think about what does it take to create conditions for changing how things are done in your organization. And so, when you think about having this bright spot and saying, gee, let's do it again or more, that is a really positive way of thinking about change. So now I'm going to turn it over to Fiona.
Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending, I guess, where you are in the country. Still morning here in California. Building on Cassandra's last point there about sort of creating that environment for change, one place to really start is to define and clarify what it is that you want to work on changing. And as obvious as that might sound, you'd be surprised, I think, sometimes if you pose the question of, hey, what do we want to work on? What do we think needs to be improved? Or what do we think we want to change? Or what issues need to be addressed? you might get more than one answer. You might get a few different viewpoints on what that is that needs to be worked on and what that needs to be changed. So it actually really helps to start there to make sure that you're all on the same page as you're moving forward. So recognizing that people may have different views on this and that there might actually be multiple things even that you want to work on, and those may need to be teased apart, and you may need to sort of strategize and prioritize a little bit on where we're going to start and where we're going to go together. So thinking about that together and what's the why. Someone mentioned a little bit about sort of asking why. Why do we need to work on this? Why do we need to work on that? What are we thinking about all of these different things? And really looking at it from different vantage points. There's no right or wrong with a lot of this work, and there's no one answer. There's a lot of different ways to approach this, and really thinking together about what that might be requires sometimes looking at it from different viewpoints. And on the next slide, we'll build on that point a little bit more. So in order to look at something from different sides, you really need to include a lot of different stakeholders and diverse opinions in this. So really think about, in terms of your organization, who needs to be part of those conversations, and make sure to include those who are most impacted by organizational change. We often think of leadership as, sometimes a top-down model, right, where the decisions happen at the top. And what happens is that those who are most impacted by those change are not necessarily those people, or they're the people who are going to be carrying it out and implementing whatever the new strategies are or the new programs. So make sure to really include folks from a broad sort of different viewpoints from across the organization, and make sure that all have a voice and all are heard and have a way to contribute to the ideas and the brainstorming and the thinking through things together. So one way to think about this is this quote, which I really like, which is that leadership should be born out of the understanding of the needs of those who would be affected by it. So again, that idea of really thinking who in your organization is going to be carrying out a lot of this work, and making sure that everyone's at the table, everyone's there, everyone who can be thinking through this and seeing it from different vantage points, and aware of where different kinds of change in the organization might be the most beneficial. Are they there at the table? Are they part of the conversation? So let's take a minute in our chat and just think of, in your own organization, who needs to be there? Who do you need to be sure to include when you're having these conversations? Who needs to be at the table? So let's see what ideas you have for that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this issue, and sometimes when you suggest it to people that are in like the leadership positions at the top of an organization, they'll say things like, there's not time, or they don't want to ask people because then they'll be disappointed if they can't do it. The thing is, if you don't ask people and you end up making decisions that probably won't work, and then you're going to have to change it anyway. And so if you can, if you do start to have some pushback of people saying that they don't want to ask people for their opinion, you can bring it back to like, don't you want this to be successful? And so we need to talk to some people that have information that would let us know what would be successful and what wouldn't, because often what we think as a manager or a consultant, we just don't have the right perspective or information to know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a quality rating and improvement system work that we do here in California, and there have been times when we've worked at a sort of leadership level and thought, okay, what about this? And then when we go back to the committees or we go back to those who are really implementing it, they look at us like, yeah, that's not going to work. So exactly, it really helps to have the right kinds of viewpoints and opinions on everything when you're there. Somebody's writing about having a team working on strategic planning. Great, includes people from all over the organization. That's great. Yeah, even some from outside the organization. That's a good thing sometimes to include too. People have viewpoints from sometimes other vantage points that you haven't maybe thought of outside the organization, who have a window in a unique way that you don't see.
Yeah.
So that's a great idea.
Yeah, somebody just wrote about not having early educators in the room and when decisions are being made, and there's lots of state initiatives with huge committees, and there's lots and lots of people on it, and there's not a single teacher, and that is problematic.
Yep.
Just as people are typing in, I have to share a quote that I just wanted to share a quote really quickly from a marketing person that I follow. Mike Brennan is quoted often for saying every every bad idea came from an executive who asked for it. And I just, it makes me smile. So the idea of, including the voices, like people are kind of chiming in of who is actually going to be affected by these decisions.
Yep.
But sorry, I just had to.
Yeah.
I think it really relates to a lot of industries and what we do. So.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's go on to the next slide. And a place to start is also, once you've got some agreement now about what are the things that we think we want to work on together to change, then develop a plan. It really helps get buy-in if everybody has a role in developing the plan and thinking it through together, so that everybody knows where they're going and it's transparent, and all have a role in that. So develop a plan together and develop a shared purpose and a vision. Where do you see this work going? Where do you all want to get together with this work? That'll really make a change in everybody feeling like they're a part of it and have a voice that matters. And structure the conversations and the documentation. This gets back to a comment that somebody put in the chat just a little while ago in terms of really helping to ensure that all have a voice. You know, there's all kinds of different personalities and all kinds of different ways of being in the world. Some are more talkative, some are more reflective or listening, and all of those kinds of roles that we have in meetings. So you want to make sure that the conversations enable all to have a voice, right? So there are going to be people who sometimes talk more than others. So if you structure the conversation in some way, maybe when you introduce an idea or you're going to work on the next task, structure the conversation in a way that you go around to each person and everybody gets to have a chance to give input, or however you want to do that, so that it makes people each have a chance to contribute. And then if you document that, people can see that they were heard, because what they said is now up on the flip chart or up on the PowerPoint or whatever it is that you're working on. It levels the playing field, and it makes sure that all have a voice and all can see the progress and can see their contribution, and it helps towards a positive transformation. It makes sure that all are involved and engaged. Another thing you can do is to map out the process. So on the next slide, you know, process mapping is a way to really say, okay, here's what we think we want to work on. Here's our purpose and our vision that we've talked about together. Here's our plan. We want to get to here. We want to get to Z. So what's steps A, B, C, D, E, F, and G on our way to get there? And sometimes it really helps to map that out. Again, it documents it. It makes it transparent. You can see that everybody's involved. Everybody's had some input into that, and all agree to what the process is. Doesn't mean you can't change it along the way. We've all had those times where we get to step G and we go, oh, whoops, we forgot about that. So that's fine. You can always go back and tweak the process, but it makes it transparent. All can see why you've changed if you've kind of had to make a swerve. For those of you who read Michelle Obama's book, she talks about sometimes there's a swerve in life that you don't always see. You can take that swerve, but you can take it together and make sure that all know what the process is and all have been part of dreaming that up and thinking it through. So sometimes that's a way to really help engage everybody and make the process very transparent and participatory.
I would add that it's really good to have that map in, especially when you have multiple meetings over time. You can bring it to the meeting and you can tell people like, we're here, and that helps them really understand and focus on the goals of that particular meeting as it fits into the larger set of meetings.
Right. And in the chat earlier, somebody talked about having some kind of activity or protocol. That's a great idea. I find that sometimes meetings, the best ones are ones where some people are actually a little bit prepared going in. So if there's a way that you want to structure a conversation to make sure everybody's had a voice, some kind of, even icebreaker materials or activities, or even a document that kind of walks you through what you're going to do that day in the meeting, an activity, like somebody said, a protocol for making sure that all are engaged, having that up on the flip chart or on a piece of paper or something, really helps to guide that process. It really can be a successful way to come in and be prepared, and everybody can, know what the process is going to be, and there's a structured way to do it so that it can really be more successful and make sure people are engaged.
Yeah, so when you think about then that idea of taking something that you've experienced in your team that worked really well and think about sharing it across your organization, what are some ideas that you have? So if you're in a senior leadership team of an organization, you might be thinking about this all the time. You know, it might be something that isn't a new idea. However, if you're not in that kind of a position, this may be a new idea. So this may be really a novel idea. Like, well, gee, I guess we could share something that we found that works, and it could help our colleagues that are in a different department or in a different program or in a different location. So we're going to get into this brainstorming by starting with kind of a review in the next slide of thinking about, it is the why. Why are we doing this? Why would we want to even do this? So when we started talking about, the leadership aspirations, we started with individuals, and then we built out last webinar about identifying other people's leadership aspirations in your team. So if you want to go to advance to the next slide, it kind of shows what this looks like in that concentric circle. So you've started to think about your own, and then you've been in conversation about others. So again, this might seem obvious, and I can't even tell you how many times people have said, well, we have a vision statement. It's like, oh, what is it? And I mean, I have yet to hear somebody actually say what it is. And so often that means to me that these organizations are actually full of passionate people, and they are excited about their work, but the vision statement doesn't capture it because they can't even remember it. And so what is what are the ideas that other people have in your team? And we talked about that last webinar, like asking people, what does it look like when our team is at our best? What would success look like with our team? Where do we want to go that we think would be better than where we are now? And so then you think about, okay, look, go out one more circle. What about our organization? How do we communicate with other people in other teams and other programs about what we do all share? Like, what, at the fundamental level, if you're in early childhood or you're working in a library, you want to help children and families. You want to help your community. And so that is common. I don't think there are people working in places like schools and libraries if they don't want that. So how do you then identify what that would look like for you and your team, and then others in your organization? Say your team is like doing so well that people are always asking you, how do you do it? How do you do it? And then you can help them say, oh, well, this is what we're doing. And sometimes there are, perceptions that other people in their organization are not aligned with this goal. And it's very rarely true. That's one of the common things when I work with organizations is that we help people surface what are their aspirations, and then people are surprised that their colleagues care about children. And it's unfortunate, but our day-to-day work sometimes doesn't lend itself to illuminating the shared aspirations that really do exist. So there's some people typing in some great suggestions. Somebody said their team's been doing a book study on excellent wins, and one idea of the book is to call out another staff member when we see them acting in a way that demonstrates the values. Right, so capturing the bright spots. There's someone has a gratitude board where they can leave notes of successes or thankfulness. That's a great idea. Yeah, so think about and type into the chat box things that you think you could do to help develop these shared aspirations and high engagement across your organization. And what can you do to help inspire others to find the bright spots and create new ones? So even thinking about, like, what was the funnest day you had at work? Like, what happened? Say maybe you had a potluck and everyone loved it. Well, why not do it again? So this is the kind of thing that, again, it seems kind of obvious, but it actually isn't. People just forget.
Someone wrote about acknowledging celebrations. That's so important too. It's great to really acknowledge when you have made a little bit of progress, and that progress can be small, but those little tiny steps, those little bright spots can really make a difference. So stop and acknowledge those. It's always great to, it's like how we feel when we check off something on our to-do list. It can feel really good to look at your process map and say, hey, look at where we started here and we've already gotten here. Let's celebrate that, those little wins.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and somebody typed in asking all the teachers, not just the lead teachers, to bring ideas for parent events. That's such a great idea. And again, so simple.
Yeah. A kudos board.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
an interesting idea. I think somebody else posted something about that too, sort of having a place to acknowledge people's contributions. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Yeah, these boards and things are really helpful because they're prompts that make it easy for someone who's had the thought to actually express it.
And sometimes those ways of, we talked earlier about making sure to include everyone. If people can't make it too, if you're having a meeting, some of these other kinds of ways of people contributing might help, whether it's a board or an online forum or email or something, so that you do have a way to collect others' voices. But I kind of like the idea of this public display of them in some way, so that people can really see that their contribution was seen and taken into consideration and heard.
Yeah. So Jen Maney just typed in when she's having a bad day, she reads the kudos or positive stories for a pickup. And that's so awesome. And I just actually started doing that myself this week. I'm writing like a highlight of my day so that when I feel like I need a reminder, I can go back and look and read what I wrote.
That's great.
Yeah, so again, these questions like what's going well, what was fun, what did you feel successful at, what helped you, who helped you, like these are the ones that will lead you to those bright spots. And so a couple more ideas, asking teachers for feedback about the speaker and asking teachers if they had skills or interests to teach or share with others. That's such a great one. Again, so many people have things that they could share with others, but they're not probably going to offer. But if somebody asks them, they'll volunteer.
Yeah, one thing I like to add to this too that I try to be really conscious of and do for my team is that sometimes I might be the only one receiving feedback from our clients. I'll use this webinar as an example. We had a designer do this logo at the bottom, and she did a lovely job, and she always does such great work. She so rarely gets to maybe even hear that positive feedback. And it could I could just absorb it all for myself, but I really try to make sure that it's shared all the way through with the people that have had, have participated in a project. So I think being conscious of that is a really important thing too, especially for people who maybe don't get that face-to-face or that direct contact with others in their
That's so important, Meredith, because I know it's oftentimes people just don't realize that the other person isn't getting the information, right? And so sometimes like a school might have had like the most incredible successful event, but people weren't there and they didn't know. And so even just sharing, I love your idea of sharing like specifically your work was so appreciated and effective, but also the organization is actually having successes that maybe other people don't know about.
Yeah, people think, oh, if I don't hear anything, was it good, was it bad? You just don't know. And so being intentional about sharing those positives is really important.
Yeah. All right, so the next slide, again, we're going to ask you, for those that are interested, no pressure, if you want to commit about trying something between now and the next webinar and how you're going to try to engage others in your organization, go ahead and type in the chat box some ideas that you have. There's just been such incredible ideas and sharings from the audience in these webinars. It's really amazing. I mean, there's so many good ideas. So a couple of comments. Jen Maney said that the community relations manager shares every media hit we get. Oh, that's great, right. So that's an example of letting people know, hey, there's positive stories about our organization. Recognizing individuals or teams in staff meetings, yeah. What else? What other ideas?
Somebody wrote about asking teachers if they have a skill or interest that they want to teach or share with others. That's a great way to include everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Someone says, I'm going to work with my team co-leader to work on team bright spots, shared goals, and developing a plan for change to better meet those goals. Great. That's great.
Each teacher could read a positive comment on the last holiday card so that all could hear it out loud. That's fabulous. Right, so that's already been received. All you have to do is read them. You don't have to create anything. It's already there.
So we've got a lot of ideas about how to engage folks in your organizations. So maybe looking at this next question now, how would you, now that you've got folks engaged, how can you start to reach towards your shared aspirations? What are some things that you might try out between now and the next webinar to work on that? Like this one person shared about trying to work on shared goals and developing a plan for change. What other ideas do folks have? What might you do to engage folks to reach towards their shared aspirations?
You know, I don't know if anybody has what are those things called, boxes, where you comment boxes or something, where you put ideas in like a box. Does anyone do that anymore? I thought, yeah, suggestion box.
Thanks, Leslie. That's exactly it.
I just thought of that when you said that, Fiona, and I thought that'd be cool because, you know, you could just write an index card or a sticky note and like stick it in a box.
Someone said we should have them for customers, but we should have them for staff. That's an interesting idea.
Yes.
Yeah, something to try out. And remember, I think it was like our first or second webinar, we talked about how, you know, really embracing all the information. I mean, if you have a comments box, not all of it might not be positive, but see those as opportunities. See those as places where, okay, well, then there's something I guess we have to work to change. That can be a good thing. It's going to be about improvement, no matter what. So, you know, see the sort of shift in your mindset on those comments that might be thought of as bad or negative. Those are opportunities to work for change.
And another idea is to prompt them towards positive, like what made your visit successful today, or who helped you today, or what would, you know, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like people that are, you know, have a research mind think, well, then you're skewing it. It's like, but we're not trying to do a research study. We're trying to get new ideas, and the new ideas that we, you know, that are going to be helpful for us are what went well, and then we can do more of it.
Right.
What made you smile today?
Here's one from Susan, that when we were talking before about an activity or a protocol, you know, or something to work towards engaging everybody, she has this activity idea of, imagine it's 5 years from now, and we're all looking back. What changes would we like to see? That might be a great activity to engage everybody and really start to think together about your shared goals and your shared things that you want to work on to change. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next question is really just prompting for next webinar, where we'll be asking the same questions about you know, sharing things across the community. So we can go ahead to the next slide. And just a quick reflection on today. Any comments in the chat box, just in general? Something that you're thinking of differently, or remember, or a new idea?
I did have a question in the Q&A from Wilma here. She was asking, is there an assessment tool to discover team members' strengths in an effort to assign tasks, especially if you're a new leader? Do you guys have any recommendations?
Well, you know, there are several. In fact, we actually have one in our book. I was looking at it yesterday. It's called something like Identifying Questions That Identify and Build on Strengths. And that is Appendix B, page 140 and 141, if you happen to have our book. And there are, you know, things like the Strengths Finders assessment that you can use, with, you know, just asking people to kind of brainstorm both about their own opinion about themselves, but then it is really helpful sometimes to have other people's opinions, like, what do you think this person does well? Because sometimes we discount our strengths, and it's only when somebody else points it out that we realize it's even a strength. So there's Jen has a comment about asking what's going well at the beginning of each meeting, and go around to say positive things. I was thinking about that, kind of doing that around strengths, like what strengths do you appreciate in your colleagues today or in yourself today? Just building it into kind of your daily work, is that you're surfacing your own and you're surfacing others.
That's a great one too. We made a list of strengths, and then we circled for each other what we think each other's strengths are. So that's great, sort of both reflecting on your own strengths, but then also hearing from others, because I know we all do tend to be a little more modest in our own self-reflection. So sometimes it's great to hear from others what they see as our strengths as well.
And it's really, this may sound really weird, but you can do something totally off the wall. Like if you were if your organization was a zoo, what animal would you be and why? And this really gets at a different part of your brain, and it's so illuminating what people will say about how they see themselves and why they see themselves as that animal. And you can even ask, what do you want to be? Like if you want to be a different animal, it's really getting at that, like sometimes the linear, like cognitive approach doesn't work as well as kind of like a non-linear imagery, metaphoric landscape.
And you can build on that too. Instead of animals, I've done fabrics. You can be any fabric. There's all kinds of things like that you can ask. It's so interesting what people will answer. The people who want to be chenille versus the people who want to be wool, or cotton. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, I'm getting crazy here.
Tour.
I was trying to scroll back up. We had a really lovely comment. I just wanted to make sure the panelists saw, especially. She says, being on these calls and webinars are a great call to action with tools and knowledge shared across the panelists and attendees. I appreciate the energy and opportunity to participate, reflect, and act. And I wholeheartedly agree, not just about the panelists, but the attendees. You guys are bringing really fantastic ideas. So thank you so much for that comment. That made my Friday.
Oh, thank you so much for reading that and for writing it.
There's someone who says she's implementing a free-for-all Fridays. It's exciting. That's something to try out in this next month. I will be meeting with staff members individually, work on their strengths and weaknesses, and leave other discussions up to them. Great. That'll be a great way to get some input.
So go ahead, if you have any other general reflections, type them in. Somebody wants to know more about what the free-for-all entails. That is a very intriguing name of the of the meeting. I think it means just having open conversation. That would be my interpretation from the chat box. And go ahead and go on to the next slide. Again, this is what we're planning for next month. It's our last in a series of 5. And we're going to have people share their successes in what they've tried from this webinar, the ideas that came out. Could be new things with your team and or new things with your other teams in your organization. And then we're going to talk about then how do you think about taking these experiences and moving them out into the community so that you can try new things in partnership with other organizations. And then I'll hand it back to Meredith.
Great. Thank you, Cassandra and Fiona. Again, I really appreciate you guys putting together this content. And I wanted to remind people that this is built off of their books, Building Together and 5 Elements of Collective Leadership, and that there's a 20% off code. Just use change or when you call customer service for both books. And after the last one, we'll probably be doing a poll, just asking you for ideas on how you enjoyed the series, other ideas that you'd like to see from these authors, or ideas for other webinars. You can also subscribe to Red Leaf's emails and like us on social media. We are out there, trying to provide really high quality content to the early childhood field. So we'd love to get you guys' support there. One new project that we have coming out is the early childhood activities from Red Leaf Press. These are taking activities from our resources. So they are from early childhood leaders, they're from they're from early childhood professionals and more trustworthy than Pinterest, I like to say. And Pinterest has its purpose, but you can trust that these are all developmentally appropriate, and play-based. So they are, those are big new things that are coming out, but you can sign up for just infant toddlers, just preschool, just school age, up to 8 years old, or you can sign up for all three. It is free. You just need to sign up with your mobile phone number. We are still kind of in beta, so unfortunately this is just for US phone numbers only. We are not going international yet. I know we have some friends across the globe, but this is just US only. They have not started going out just yet. They're going to be starting this month. So go ahead and sign up now so you don't miss any, and you can register at that www.redleafpress.org/texts. And that is it for today's webinar. So thank you again for everyone logging in. We really appreciate it. We hope to see you back here in February, and enjoy your day and your weekend. So thank you.
Thanks everyone.